The video?
Right at the collarbone.
20 minutes?
9 minutes.
So you have a right one. I really want people to remember just how far that connection goes, because the pathway from the vagus nerve, has to exit the skull, and it exits the skull through an opening. That's called a foramen. Foramen just means fancy medicine for opening a hole, and it's called your jugular foramen, and it travels down from there out of the same hole with a couple of other nerves and a big vein called your internal jugular, right? And that drains the toxins, the metabolic waste from your brain. Then it comes down the side of your neck, and it enters the torso right at the collarbone. So you have a right one and a left comes down. And that's why a lot of people who have excess tightness or tension above the collarbone, with tight traps, or they don't have very good breathing patterns and they're really tight at the pec and the chest, they can irritate that nerve as the blood flow around that region and has vagus nerve issues. Then it comes down and wraps around your esophagus. It travels behind your sternum. And then it exits right at the stomach. The esophagus drops into the stomach, and then it wraps all around the stomach right by the diaphragm. And then from there, it spiders off to the organs, goes to the right side and goes towards the left side. And there's places where what I teach and what I find in people is that the nerve is very vulnerable in certain spaces through these openings and through these changes where the nerve enters different body cavities. So the big places where the nerve can have an issue, from tightness or tension in the body, it could be you have soft tissue tightness, muscle tightness, fascial tightness, which is the connective tissue of the body, or maybe joints that get stuck and don't move as well as they could from lifestyle habits. But one is that as it exits right at the skull, so right at the top where the skull joins the cervical spine, is one of the biggest places that that nerve gets an issue. Right? And we'll talk about how you can help with that later. And another one is going to be actually right at the top of the neck, behind the angle of the jaw, at what they call a cervical 1. That's where the largest lymph node in the neck sits. And we talked about that in the prior. So that's number 2. Number 3 is at the collarbone, above the collarbone. That's number 3. And then number 4 is right at the bottom of the sternum, right as it enters into the stomach, at the top of your abdomen. So those 4 places, the biggest nerves can get twisted, turned, kinked, poor blood flow, and it chokes off the tone in either one of those places. And I'm going to tell you now, if you look at the average posture that a human being assumes today, you choke off all 4 of those places for hours and hours and hours on it, right? And then you get a vagus nerve problem.
Okay. And would that be, if you've, with sort of the work that you do, Perry, sort of palpated those areas because of what you said earlier of lack of oxygenation and nourishment creating?
Yes.
Assuming they're going to be very tender points.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do a lot of work with the vagus nerve just from manual work on yourself, because you can take care of these places on your own, or for someone else, because we talked a little bit just before, but tight tissue influences how well
over to the back.
Things move, right? Because if things are really, really tight, you're not going to get a lot of movement in it, right? So tightness and tension is a protective strategy of your nervous system to protect you. All right? But it also chokes off the fluid flow of the body. And that is arteries and veins, and then the cerebrospinal fluid, which is the fluid that floats around the brain and around the spinal cord, and your lymphatic fluid. And those affect how nerves function. Because tight tissue, nerves need to slide and glide in between tissues. So you don't want nerves to be stuck in a tissue. And you don't want them to be compressed from tightness and tension, because nerves don't like direct pressure. They like to slide and glide and move. That's why techniques they teach in physical therapy called nerve glides, gliding a nerve, helps you feel so much better. Right? And nerves are really freaking long, and they're all interconnected. But when you have excess tightness and tension, you tighten tissue, but you decrease the flow of blood to a nerve, you decrease the waste from the nerve, and you decrease the fluid, how the fluid moves around the nerve, and you starve the nerve. And from what? Well, oxygen and nutrients. And when nerves begin to die, they become really, really super sensitive. And they start to tell you that they're not happy by you usually getting tingling and numbness or pins and needles. First thing I think with tingling and numbness and pins and needles is poor blood flow and suffocation from something else. And you got to find it. And why is that related to the vagus nerve? Well, the vagus nerve has its own blood flow and vein flow and lymph flow all around it. So it can be affected. But you have all this excess stress from the sympathetic nervous system being all on all the time, what they call sympathetic dominance or sympathetic hypervigilance, which means that, dude, I'm not resting at all, because if I rest, I'm dead. And then guess what happens when you're in that state? You overbreathe, you hold your breath, you get excess tightness and tension, and then you feed the dragon. So the baby dragon becomes a big giant one over time. And a lot of times, just doing some of the simple vagus nerve stuff that we can go over the way with, like gargling and singing and cold and stuff like that, is not enough, because you need to go directly after some of these areas where the tension and tightness is so intense that you have to release it, right? So that's why one of the reasons is very, very simple, is that I tell people you always rub the back of your skull and back of your head and massage it, because who doesn't like that, first of all, and who doesn't have pain? Everybody does. And it just so happens that's also, you're choking off the major blood flow to your brain through the vertebral arteries when you're checked out. So you choke off your brain flow, right? So you rub there. And then people say, for how long and how deep and how often? Here's my answer. Yes. Which means just get in there and play and explore. Feel first, think second. And if it hurts to press in there, stop pressing so hard to lighten it up. Then you rub along the side of the neck, right behind the angle of the jaw, right below the ear at the largest lymph node in the neck, where it gets really, really super tight. So you free up choke point number 2. Then you rub above and below the collarbone, where it gets really, really tight. And I'll give you a super duper cool extra one here. Massaging directly underneath your collarbone, your clavicle. You free up the muscle they call your subclavius. Sub means below, clavius is the clavicle. When that muscle gets super tight, it'll clamp down your vagus nerve like there's no tomorrow. So that's why you always want to rub underneath the collarbone rather aggressively. And trust me, it's going to hurt. That's because that means you need.
Right? Here's the progress.
And then that's spot number 3. And then spot number 4 is where if you go all the way, if you follow your sternum all the way down and you get to the bottom, eventually you're going to be off bone and you're going to be right at the top of your abdominal muscle called your rectus abdominis, right? And then there is the spot where your rib cage kind of changes angles, right? Like at the bottom, and then it kind of angles down like an umbrella. Just rub all up underneath the top of your abdominal muscle, more so to your left-hand side. I don't want you to do both, but more on the left-hand side, because that's the side where the stomach is. And that's where the esophagus comes from. And that's probably the number one spot where people get a lot of tightness and tension. And you do that. And you do it all 4. So if you do massage the back of your head, massage that part of the neck behind the angle of the jaw, massage the collarbone, and massage down there, and then you do some of the stuff that we're going to tell you later, you're going to have a completely different response. And you're going to feel super good.
Super.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today's guest
Perry Nicholson. Perry, thank you very much for coming on. We are super excited to have you today. Go ahead and give the listeners a little background on yourself, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. And I love the name of your podcast. You know, I'm all about movement. And that's how we kind of hooked up in the first place, right? In the movement world. And I got to say, before I start talking about my stuff, how much I love the stick mobility. You were kind enough to give me some of them. I think I have like early models.
You still got the first gen. Yes.
That did, man.
Yes, you got first gen.
The kung fu grip things on that. But I tell you, I love those things. And honestly, they were very instrumental in helping me recover from my quad tendon tear. Because of doing the isometrics in those movements really helped me recover. So I just want to say thank you. I love all the work that you're doing. It's very helpful for me personally.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
So a little bit about me. Well, let's see. I'm the owner of Stop Chasing Pain, which is my business. It's trying to help people all over the world to try to heal and recover from all types of pain, from chronic pain, physical pain, emotional pain. And the whole premise is to not just treat where they hurt, but look everywhere else as well. That's kind of my motto. My degree was in chiropractic, I think 23 years ago, which is, I can't believe I have to say 23 years now. But, it's crazy because I don't even tell people I'm a chiropractor anymore, because when I say that, they automatically think that of what I do, right? Like I just take care of backs or back pain, and I don't really do too much of that anymore. I honestly can't even describe what I do. It's almost like this hybrid mix of anything and everything that I need to do that I've studied over the years to try to help people. I think the biggest thing that I try to do is to take complex things and make them very simple and basic and fundamental and applicable to help people heal. That's one of the reasons why I think movement works so great, because it can do so many wonderful things. It's not that complicated, and how you can do some amazing things with a single stick. It's just this fundamentals and basics, and that's what got me into what we're going to talk about today with the lymphatic system as a fundamental and a basic, just that most people have no idea that it exists. That's all. Right. And then when you do, you usually say, why in the hell didn't somebody tell me this a long time ago?
Very true.
And
yes.
That pretty much brought me to where I am right now.
So, like you alluded to, today's subject matter is the lymphatic system. We know a lot of listeners right now are like, the lymphatic what? And so they don't have any concept of what it is. So let's introduce them to that, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And, honestly, I had the same reaction.
Oh, did you?
I did. Well, 5 years ago, because there's probably a context to give you my story. I've been in healthcare for 22 years, and I've been studying a lot of different disciplines, from musculoskeletal system and the nervous system, pain science, and all these different things that you can do to help people become healthy and heal. And I was doing that. In the background, something was slowly happening to me where my body was actually falling apart. I came down with an autoimmune disease, which means that I got sick and nobody really knows what it was or why it happened. And the everything that I knew was not really helping. It may have been preventing me from getting worse, but it certainly wasn't helping me recover the way I wanted to. And the traditional approaches from medicine, when they were trying to help me, were making me way worse, slowly killing me. They weren't doing it on purpose. It's just the way that they do things. And I knew that I had to look for answers that were not there. I was missing something that I was not seeing. And I don't know, honestly, I think I've been looking for this my whole life, because one of the things that's always been in the back of my mind is not so much why people get sick, because that's part of being alive, right? But you're not supposed to stay sick. You're not supposed to be injured all the time. You're not supposed to be tired, fatigued, lethargic, and have all these disease names that we just become used to hearing, and we think it's normal. It's not normal. The human body is designed to recover and adapt and be resilient. And just because you get older in your quote-unquote years doesn't mean your body has to decay. And then you get this BS stuff where they say you're just getting older, which infuriates me. because I just turned 54 and I feel better and move better than I did when I was 24, without question. You just have to know how to do it. So I was really bad, guys. I had to stop teaching. I had to stop traveling. I had to stop seeing clients. I closed my office. I'm not even sure if you knew this. I could barely function. I was taking 4 or 5 naps a day. My memory was going. I had brain fog. I was actually headlong into a neurodegenerative disorders with Alzheimer's type symptoms where I could barely remember things that happened minutes before. And I had a nervous breakdown and a physical breakdown. I was bad. It was that suffering that led me to search for answers and seek things that I never would have looked for before because I was not suffering, right? I mean, when you're comfortable, why do you want to change?
Yeah.
Yes, it was a big lesson for me that, the universe saw it that, hey, I'm going to kick your ass because I need you to learn something here to try to change the world. That's kind of the way I look at it. And I came across the lymphatic system. And I went to a workshop in London to start to study energy medicine from the standpoint of what do cells need in order to heal, recover, and regenerate from an energy standpoint. At that workshop, somebody said, I think I know what your problem might be. And I'm like, well, can you tell me? Because I'd love to know. And they said, I think your lymphatic system is an issue. And I said exactly what you said. That's what? Because I never really thought about it. I mean, the lymphatic system is, we'll get more into about what it is in a moment, but it's a system that not many people hear about unless you have 2 things. If you have cancer, then you hear about lymph, because cancer can spread throughout the human body via the lymphatic system. It's called a metastasis. And the other one is when you have what's called lymphedema. That's where you have a body part that might swell up with fluid or inflammation to sometimes 4 or 5 times the original size. Then they know, oh, lymphedema. But I never even thought about it. And this person proceeded to do a lymph assessment on me. And they press their fingers in areas of the body where you have what they call lymph nodes. And lymph nodes are gatherings of the lymphatic system that are designed to protect you and heal you. The basic function of the lymphatic system is to kill stuff, like bad things. It's part of your immune system, and it's also part of your cardiovascular system, which many people are really blown away by. But its job is to kill bacteria, viruses, all different types of viruses, parasites, fungus, cancer, metabolic waste, and cellular waste. That means that's the waste of your own cells that die naturally from you just being alive every day. Because